that I'm still expecting this model by Beck and Canary to be the best one. Yeah, but the fact is that when I decided to stop at 2008 Q3, because then I would have some outliers for sure in my series because of the GDP falls and investment and so on. And then there is also the problem, I'm using the nominal interest rate as observable. And there is the problem of the, because actually the zero lower bound. And so this can invalidate the estimate. So that's why I prefer to say, but this is a check that I could do just to see whether we get the same result. What I did was to, as I told you, to calibrate in a different value the financial parameters, and then my results hold. And then I also using different model specifications. So what I did was to eliminate one friction at a time. So what if you are in a model, in an economy where prices are perfectly flexible? I have the log likelihood for the three models, and then the bold is the one that is more likely. So the SWGK model was always the best job, let's say, even if I remove one friction at a time. And another thing that, just to check this model, was to see the series of the spread that they deliver and compare to the available proxies of it. And again, the SWGK is the best one. Here is another way to do comparisons with the data. I look at some moments such as the relative standard deviation to output, cross-correlation with output, and then autocorrelation in the data, in the SW model, SWBGG, and SWGK. So what I can see, okay, this part which are in blue are the values that are closer to the data. So while the superiority of the SWGK and the SWGK is evident both for the autocorrelations and cross-correlation with output, I would say that it's less evident for the relative standard deviation to output, but still at least it does a better job in matching the relative standard deviation of investment and interest rates. Although I must say that this model do not perfectly reproduce the relative standard deviation. So maybe because there is no heterogeneity, I don't know. Okay, I was doing actually other checks because there might be some measurement error in some observable, so I added measurement error to this observable, and I would say that in this case I improved the relative standard deviation of inflation in this rate. Okay, now for the input responses, let me just discuss this monetary policy shock and then I will stop. For the monetary policy shock, I want to compare input responses for the three different models. And in this case, what I did, the size of the shock is 1% standard deviation in the three models, so that I can compare also from a quantitative point of view. Although, of course, parameters are different, so the mechanism of the transmission of the shock might be different. So let's start with the Smith and Walters economy. Monetary policy shock, I simulate a contraction. You know, the exercise that I do, I simulate a contraction. And then we have the standard transmission mechanism. Okay, the interest rate rises, the central bank decides to raise the interest rate, investment falls. So in terms of AD, AS, what we have a shift in the AD curve, so output and inflation falls. And this is the standard transmission mechanism of monetary policy. What happens in the SWBGG model? Okay, in this model there is an additional transmission mechanism because on top of the standard Smith and Walters, standard mechanism of transmission of monetary policy, when there is a rise in the interest rate, what happens is that there is a fall in the price of capital. Since there is a fall in the price of capital, the net worth of firms is affected, in particular is reduced. But then if the net worth falls, the leverage rise rises because firms are more indebted. And if the leverage rises, the spread rises. It means that the cost of investment is more than before, and this means that investment falls by more. So this is the essence of the financial accelerator mechanism. Indeed, you can see that from a quantitative point of view, the fall in investment is much more pronounced compared to the SW model. Then the SWGK model, just to discuss the transmission mechanism. What we can see is that standard transmission mechanism of the mortar frequency shock. In addition, again we have a fall in the price of capital. But if you think at the bank's balance sheet, what we have is that there is a fall in assets because the price of the asset is less than before. And banks want to restore profits. So what they do is that they raise the spread to raise their profits. But then rising the spread, it means that again we have a fall in investments. And this so is another accelerator mechanism of the shock. So which is common to both the SWGK and the SWBGG model. There are shocks for which we have actually a financial attenuator effect, but because of the constraint of time, I won't discuss the details of the mechanism. So let me just conclude then. So in this paper, what I did was comparing three models. So a model without financial friction, so where Modigliani Miller theorem holds, and then looking at other two models that encompass financial frictions, but these frictions are modeled in a different, are microfounded in a different way. And the main result is that this SWGK model, so it's Metzenbacher's economy plus financial frictions are Carter and Caradi, does better. What's the intuition behind this result? I mean, I would say that the euro area is a bank-based financial system as opposed to the US, for example, which is market-based financial system. And this means that a model like the one by Gerfer and Caradi that explicitly introduced the banking sector, it provides a micro foundation for the financial frictions within the banking sector, is able to better replicate the financial market in the euro area, and this explains why this model wins the race. Okay, I'm done.
Thank you, Stefania. I think we still have around 10 to 15 minutes for questions, so understanding that we already had some questions asked during the presentation. If anybody wants to ask for a clarification or to make a point, please do.
You conclude that the SWGK model outperforms the other one in forecasting the euro area inflation, but I would wonder, there was no such variation in it.
That's true. Sorry, because this is an additional exercise that I did in the paper, but I didn't want to present because the time was very short. So what I did was to use a Phillips curve classification using either the measure of the output gap or the spread to predict inflation. So what I do, I estimate with OLS, equation 17, so P pi 4t plus 1 is the quarter inflation, and then it depends on the P pi dt is the analyzed one period change in the private consumption deflator, and then this variable x can either be the output gap or the spread. And then I forecast inflation in line with this equation 18, and I compute the forecast errors. Okay? But then what I do, I use as x, I use the measure of the output gap produced by the SWBGG model and the one by the SWGK, and then for a measure of the spread, I use the spread generated by the SWGK and the SWBGG model. And then what I conclude is I look at the mean square forecast error for the different specification, and I also use two control models, a random walk, and a regressive process. So what I conclude is that you can see that these forecast errors are lower when I forecast inflation using the measure of the outward gap from the SWBGD model or the measure of the spread. So I'm sorry about that, but yeah, that's true. I didn't have enough
Okay,
time.
thank you.
Okay.
Two questions.
Yes, please.
One is you had an equation and it had the riskless rate of interest in there. So what's the riskless rate of interest for the euro area? And number two, I mean, you didn't put up the model in detail for understandable reasons, but how does the model deal with external finance, that is inflows of financial capital and outflows of financial capital
Okay.
from, I mean, number one, within the euro system, which I don't know if you treat as one country or not, but in terms of financial frictions, there's still financial frictions,
Yeah, okay.
but certainly outside the euro zone as well.
That's true. Okay, okay. Let me start from the first. So, what you were saying, what is the risk-free rate in this the euro area? Okay. Okay. First, let me say that as observable, I was taking the nominal interest rate, and the data set is available from is the one used in the new area-wide model, which is the model used by the ECB, and it's available as this euro area business cycle network. So what they do. I mean, there's a paper discussing how they build this data set, so I don't know whether I'm answering to your question, but they put some weight for each country, and then they build this data set for all of them.
Come on. I mean, if someone tells me there's a riskless interest rate, there has to be a riskless instrument. So what's the riskless instrument?
Okay. So you were not discussing about the nominal interest rate that they.
I mean, nominal rate is fine.
Okay,
I just want
let me
you tell
say-
me, tell
okay.
me there's a
Okay,
risk-free interest rate that I can get.
Exactly.
My question to you is,
What
what
is
do I
the
buy to
rate?
get the
Okay.
risk-free interest
What
rate?
they do in order to compute this risk-free rate, then you, okay, let me say that I stop at 2008 Q3, which might be important, and what they use is the government AAA bonds.
Which government?
Okay, what they have the AAA. Right,
That's
it's,
France or France, Germany.
Within the euro area.
Well, wait, I mean, so look, if they're all using the euro and they're all AAA, then why would they all be different?
Okay, I would say that nowadays they're not all
Not
that.
nowadays, I mean, I'm talking about your sample period.
I don't know exactly how they compute the AAA, which country you're looking at, or the way that they're putting on the. This is something that I think the statistical office of the ECB is doing, but this is what is generally used as a risk-free rate in the economy. So, I mean,
So you're telling me there's no pure risk-free instrument? So if I wanted to approximate the risk-free rate that these people are calculating, I'd have to buy the right combination of German, French, Dutch,
yeah, that's true.
AAA rated securities.
Right,
Yeah, that's
And the
true.
weights change over time.
That's right.
right.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
Yes.
Right.
right.
I mean,
Okay.
The
I
whole,
Okay.
am looking at the data set, but yeah, of
Okay,
course this
alright.
changes over time.
Okay.
That's good. And then you have another question about
Yeah, the other question is how, external finance. So how do we
Exactly.
handle capital
Okay, no,
inflows, capital
this is of course a closed economy model. So what I'm doing is that, let's say roughly speaking, if you have the resource constraint, we have consumption, investment, and government consumption, and that's it. Of course, there are some adjustment costs because there are some frictions, but I'm not considering net export, so I'm not considering capital inflows or outflows. So this is a closed economy model, and I'm not looking in this paper. I'm not looking at international flows or the fact that banks can borrow from domestic or foreign depositor, or the firm can borrow from domestic or foreign banks. This is actually a project that I'm working on, but not in this paper. So,
Okay,
yeah.
so let's say then that we saw a big inflow of financial capital into EU area banks. So in your model, we would kind of view that as what? Kind of an exogenous shock to the system?
Okay,
Could you repeat the question? This was not quite clear on the queue.
Yeah, my question was, so, I mean, if there's no modeling of financial flows, either into the Eurozone or out of the Eurozone, then for the purposes of running the model and seeing how it responds to things, presumably then an inflow of financial capital into Euro area banks from abroad would be seen as an exogenous shock
Yeah.
and modeled that way.
What
Yeah,
happens
okay.
is that, yeah, because what happens in this kind of model is, for example, if you think of the resource constraint, we have consumption, investment, and government spending. And then, suppose in this model there is a shock to government spending. So what I would say, of course I'm approximating, but this is also an exercise that we did for the UK economy, is that a shock to this government spending capture a shock that is output but is not related to consumption and investment. So this is a way, but of course it's not explicitly modeled in this work that I've done.
Here, like in the Kiyotaki model, there is a positive probability that workers will come back.
Exactly. And this is actually, no, but this is a,
Evolutionary economics.
yeah, no, but this is the dynamics that you have, for example, in these models, in order to avoid the full self-financing. So this survival rate. If you read this survey on financial fiction by Codrini, is indeed speaking about that, because of course what they want to avoid these models is that at the end firms, let's say the borrowers, can accumulate enough net worth that don't need to borrow anymore. And so there is no need for financial market.
Which is most of the case what happens in reality, by the way.
That firms don't die? I wouldn't say that.
Firms die a lot, but firms self-finance investment.
Yeah, okay. They can use, yeah, they can also use other purposes, but it is a way to, I mean, it's a modeling device to introduce, yeah. I don't know if you're an empirical guy or more theoretical, but models use function. And in a sense, they try to capture some elements that we have in reality, but of course, I don't think that there is a model that's fully captured in reality. So.
There's a possible extension of your work, and there's a further candidate we should consider in your comparison of performance, and is the way Kurdia and Woodford introduced no restrictions.
No, that's true.
And that could go very well for Europe, because they introduce a banking sector and a spread between them to end.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's also a very interesting model that I can look at and see yeah. I can look at it.
So if there are no more questions, I would like to thank Stefania for her presentation. Thank all the participants for the questions that were posed. And now we can move on to the second presentation.
The second candidate.
Paolo Tacchioni, who's not here yet.
He may be outside.
Let's see.